There, lovely, radiant souls. It's good to see you all here today. I had hoped to go on a little bit later this evening, but it's been one of those days where the schedule and time and when we expect things to occur, I don't know, life's happening on its own time. So hopefully, if you're not able to join me now, you'll be able to catch the replay when it does work for you. We are talking about focusing on rejection trauma. It is everywhere. Sometimes we think that traumas have to be these big, huge events, and they don't. When we start honoring the fact that traumas can be what we may judge as insignificant, we are able to really move forward in life and come to understand ourselves on a whole new level. It's very empowering. And that's part of what I want to do here with you today. First, let's talk about the rejection trauma and some of the seven of the ways, I should say, that rejection trauma might show up in your life. There are many other ways that trauma manifests, but these are some of the bigger things that we see as we carry those traumas into adulthood and then try to cope with those things that have happened that we are not processing through. Because trauma truly should be an experience that taught us something. It shouldn't be something heavy. It shouldn't be, and I shouldn't use the word should. There's a lot of should happening in my language. So let's start over and say that once we heal trauma, trauma can be an experience that teaches us something versus being a heavy situation where we are carrying around the emotions, those stacked emotions, with us through life, allowing it to affect the way that we interact with others and the way that we feel about ourselves, even more importantly. So, seven of the ways rejection trauma might show up in your life. One, if you're a people pleaser. Now, that can go into personality structure too, but we'll save that for another day. So, it's not solely a trauma indicator, but it can surely be exasperated, exaggerated by trauma. The second, difficulty giving and receiving love. So keeping people, at arm's length, not being able to receive when people do kind, loving things for us, and having a hard time giving, making ourselves emotionally available. Three, we struggle to let others in. Kind of goes along the same theme. Fourth one, we feel as though we aren't enough. And that's just a miserable way to feel and go through life because we've all been created to be the beautiful beings that we are for a reason. And we are enough. There's nothing that we have to do, there's nothing we have to achieve, there's not a certain standard we have to uphold. We just, at the core of who we are, get to be who we were created to be. And that is enough. And what we have as our beings is what other people around us need. All right. So, five, we struggle to trust others with our feelings, not being emotionally open, not wanting to get hurt. Rejection is an incredible proponent of causing us to reject others first because if we reject them, they can't reject us. And we can just be emotionally open with people. That is when we can truly connect with one another. The sixth one is we make negative assumptions about others. We just feel like either they're going to do something negative to us, there are negative ulterior motives perhaps behind what they're doing, or we just think they don't like us or something to that extent that's negative when we don't actually have facts to back that up. And then the seventh way that rejection trauma might show up in our lives is when it's really challenging for us to compromise. So when compromising doesn't come even easily, neither do words sometimes. When compromising doesn't come easily or we're not able to give, we're not able to give just a little bit, that's usually a trauma trigger in action, a coping mechanism. So I want you to connect with, we're going to search for within 3 different rejections. Your first rejection, your biggest rejection, which you may not have to search very hard for that one. And then the third one, we're going to discover an unexpected or unsuspected rejection, something that maybe you covered up with your response or just flat out denial that that was rejection. And I want you to open that can of worms, and I'm going to put the tapping video in the comments because not only do I want you to open the can of worms, I want you to have the tools to process it. So we spend a lot of time in our head, and you may already know that there are 3 centers of intelligence, if you will, within our being. Our head, of course, our brain, our heart center, our feeling center. Our heart is very intelligent. And if you listen to Greg Braden, he says it's a second brain. And then our third intelligence center is our gut, that intuition and instincts. Now, we can get hyper focused in one of the 3 because with our personality structure, for those of you who research or follow the Enneagram will already know that based upon your Enneatype, you have default programming, if you will, to one of those 3 centers. So there's going to be a center that you use that comes very, very naturally, but it's not always the feeling center, for instance, if you're a heart point. So the Enneagram 3s, I'm not going to get too deep into the Enneagram. It's fascinating, and I feel like there's so many positives for people knowing it. But I just want to give you a few examples because I don't want you to think, oh, I'm in my head all the time, I'm a head point. It doesn't work like that. So for example, the 3, which is a heart-centered point, they have a really hard time connecting with their emotions. You would think that that would come naturally and easily for them because it's a heart-centered point, but it doesn't. Now, the ones are gut center, but ones tend to ignore the gut, the instinct, and go to their head and talk themselves into the rational standpoint rather than trusting the gut. So if you explore that further, don't expect your default intelligence center to necessarily be what you use. There's a lot to discover about yourself. And so I invite you to use the tools to do so. Okay, so to discover these rejections, what I would like you to do is if it's easier for you to connect with your heart by putting your hand on your heart, I welcome you to do so. But I want you to drop down into your heart center. So if you spend a lot of time in your head, this may be new. It might be different for you. You might not know what to expect. Oftentimes we won't sit within our heart center too much or too long because the feelings that come up may be overwhelming. We don't know what to do with them. We don't want to feel them. It's uncomfortable for so many reasons. We will avoid our feeling center. But a lot of things get recorded within our heart center, and it's a great way of also being able to pull information from places other than your conscious mind by dropping down into that intelligence of your heart center. So you can put a hand on your heart, whatever works for you. I just want you to drop down and feel into your heart. So essentially just taking yourself into open meditative space. Take some nice deep breaths to calm yourself and relax. And let's start with your biggest rejection because it's likely going to be the easiest one for you to find. And we just want you to ask your heart center, what is the biggest rejection you've experienced? What is the biggest rejection I've experienced? Now, you may want to write it down. You may want to make a note in your phone or grab a pen and paper because sometimes, even though we don't think we're going to forget, by the time we move through all the steps, we may forget one. So, whatever came to you, jot it down and document it. Now, the next thing that we're going to ask is going back to the very first time we experienced this. What is the first rejection we ever experienced? And this is where getting out of your conscious mind can be really beneficial because it may be very, very young. It could be, rejection comes in all different forms, whether it's a parent rejecting us or a peer rejecting us on the playground at school or a cousin rejecting us at a very young age. It may not be at a time when you are mature and your conscious mind is fully developed or developed enough to connect with that or retain that memory. It also might be impacting enough that you shut down and shut the connection to the memory off. So again, dropping down into your heart center, feel into your heart, and just ask yourself, what is the first rejection I experienced? And then tune into your whole being. Are you seeing a scene? Does a scene from your childhood come to mind? Do you see pictures? Do you see colors? How does your body feel? Are you carrying the tension somewhere? I encourage people to do an emotional CAT scan when I work with them individually and see where they're storing that energy. So, do you feel the tension? Does your stomach get queasy? Do your shoulders get tight? What are you feeling as this memory comes in for you? Are you hearing sounds? Are you smelling something from the environment you were in? All of those indicators are information that's really powerful to collect as you sit with this. So, again, dropping down into your heart, what is the first rejection I experienced? Now, when I work with clients, oftentimes these young memories do come from within the family unit. So it could also be something that you encountered with a sibling. And my sibling and I did not always get along, but oddly enough, I don't recall any rejection from any of the fights or spats or childhood things that I encountered with him. But think about those relationships that were challenging for you. And then the last rejection that we're going to identify is an unsuspected rejection, just something that you haven't connected with currently in your mature adult being as having been a form of rejection trauma for you. So, one last time, go ahead and drop down into your heart and just ask yourself, what is a rejection I should now be aware of that I have been denying or ignoring or not realizing? You may also notice that once you experience a trauma younger in life, when we don't cope with it, we will continue to have that experience so we can learn what we need to learn. And then once we do, somehow those circumstances stop presenting themselves in our life. And that's the freedom that we want to take from this. So you have those memories written down, you have those experiences fresh in your mind, brought to the surface. And you can also use muscle testing, yes, no, to explore if memories that you're having are from my deepest wisdom, a rejection trauma, when, whatever certain experience, and then pull and you'll get a yes if it's strong, and you'll get the break or the weak muscle response if it's a no. So you can also use that, or a pendulum. There's many ways to explore if you have those tools beside just dropping down into your heart. There's, in muscle testing, pendulums much quicker than sitting with yourself and exploring, but the exercise of exploring yourself is super powerful. So I always like to walk people through that so they have multiple tools to use. And if you are interested in learning muscle testing or pendulum dowsing or pendulum use, there are courses within our Stronger Together community that you can utilize for that information as well. But to go ahead and release the emotions that you've brought to the surface, we are going to do tapping. And I'm going to drop that in the comments so you can walk through that on your own. And as I mentioned in the description of this video, it might take more than one round. Traumas are stacked, they're multifaceted. There's more than one emotion that stores within us when we experience those situations. So give yourself some grace. And if you need to tap more than one time, honor yourself and do so. Additionally, I think that tapping is one of the most liberating tools that we can have in our arsenal. And so I invite you to tap for a week, twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. And if you don't feel better at all at any point throughout that, please reach out to me and let me know, because my clients tell me that the more they tap, the better they feel. And having tools to process day-to-day life makes life so much easier. So make sure that now that you brought the stuff up, you don't just sit in it. Jump into that other video that I'm going to drop in the comments. It'll be there if you're watching it on replay, and walk yourself through releasing. And if you are ready to go deeper into your releasing, if you're ready to let go of some heavier experiences in life or things that you're not able to just release on your own and you'd like some expert guidance, then I also invite you to the opportunity to do so with Sammy Jo and I live on Thursday at 5 p.m. in the live connection call. So we will be in that call this Thursday and again in 2 weeks. So if you'd be interested in going deeper, releasing the rejection trauma, I invite you to do so. As we close out, breath is very cleansing, it's very healing. I invite you, I welcome you, I ask you to take 3 deep cleansing breaths with me. And just release and cleanse out any emotions, anything that's been brought to the surface, any unconscious programming that you're ready to let go of, anything you've been carrying with you from the moment in time that these rejections happened. Breathe that energy out of your body and let it exit and no longer be a part of you. Thank you for joining me here. If you have questions as you watch this on replay, please drop them in the comment. I'd be happy to come back and guide you, answer those questions, and journey with you along life. Thanks so much and have a great evening.